All right, these are sayings of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, which were gathered by his son-in-law and his successor, the seventh Lubavitcher Rebbe. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, he was the sixth, and this is a picture of the seventh Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he gathered these together and put them into a book form that's called the HaYom. Here we go. This is today. Because there's some years there's two others, so we have two messages here. My father said, truth is the middle path. If a person inclines too much to the right, one second, maybe it's bigger over here. Can I do it? No, I can't. Okay. An inclination too much to the right, namely to be over strict with yourself and to find all sorts of faults and problems, which is not according to the truth. Or you go too much to the left. What does it mean to the left? You be too overindulgent, too selfish, making excuses, covering over your faults, or being lenient in what the Torah says because of self-love. You love yourself. Therefore, you're looking all the time to find how you can take the least the difficult path. As both of these are false. To be too severe on yourself and to always look at yourself, oh, I'm so bad, I'm so terrible, I have to be more religious, I have to be more this, because then you become miserable all the time, and that's not, you're not really serving God, you're serving yourself. To be too, how do you say, too lenient on yourself, and to say, listen, the main thing is to be happy and to do and to be this, and so I'm not going to be severe on myself at all, so a person will come to do sins. This is basically the topic of the Tanya, the basic book of Chabad, Hasidut. It starts off that every Jew is sworn in to be a tzaddik. A tzaddik is a person that always just feels God, and he doesn't think about himself at all. Only a tzaddik. A tzaddik has basically no problems in serving God or distractions from serving God. Basically, even though there's different levels of tzaddik, but a tzaddik is a person, he feels God all the time. But a person that doesn't feel God all the time, so he has an inclination to be selfish. So what do you do with this inclination to be selfish? You have to control it. But if you control it too much and you're too strict on yourself, you have to decide when to control, what to do. If you're overly strict on yourself, so true, you're not going to do any sins, but you're going to be miserable. And in some ways, that's the biggest sin of all. You might just throw the whole business away. Who needs it to live a miserable life? And on the other hand, the person could say, listen, if it's so important to be happy, so I'm not going to be strict on myself at all. So then you're going to also end up doing whatever you want to. So therefore, what's the solution? Truth. Follow the truth. That's the central path. That's today's message from the first udder. Here's the second. From my father, the sin of Aaron's sons was that they drew close to God and they died. Okay, this is going to be a little bit complicated, but you can do it. Aaron's sons, they had so much love of God, they felt the greatness of God, the goodness of God, the love of God, the depth of God, the life of God, how wonderful, how mysterious, how do you say, enticing God is. So good, so wonderful. They just wanted to come closer and closer to God. It says they did that because that was called going without coming back. They wanted to go to God. That's good. They wanted to go to, what do they want to come back for? What's there to come back for? This miserable, terrible, cruel world. Right? They want to come back to this world. They wanted to come close to God. That's a good thing, right? Wrong. There has to be always a balance. There has to be titaru. A person, first of all, you want to come in front of God? First of all, you have to check out your motivations. A person has to be clean and pure. And this is evident on what you do. The highest of planes comes down to the lowest. What you actually do is the most important thing. Therefore, if what you do is you just want to come close to God and you don't want to improve the world, that's called death. And that's why they died. We're put in the world for a purpose. God wants us to be here, but he wants us to appreciate him. So you have to have both. Then it says, God also commands Moses, go and speak to Aaron. The letters of Aaron are the same letters of seeing, Aaron. This refers to intellect. The intellect sees God or can see God. You can't see God with your eyes. Moses tells God, if you want to see God, tells Aaron, Moses tells Aaron, if you want to enter into the sacred area, in other words, all these deep levels of godliness, you have to know that on the ark was in the Holy of Holies. You want to go into the Holy of Holies, to the deepest levels of godliness. So you have to know that on the ark, which that's the source of the holiness, that there is a covering, a kaporet. And what's the kaporet? The ark contained the tablets, which that's pure godliness. But you have to know that there's a covering over it. There's an inner intention and a purpose why God doesn't want to be totally revealed, why he wants to conceal himself. That's what it says, the Pnei Kaporet, the inside, Pnei, the inside of the Kaporet. Now, the Kaporet was the covering that covered over the ark. The ark was like a chest that was laying on the ground. It wasn't standing up. It was laying down, and the tablets were inside of it. And there was a covering over it. A thick covering was over it. And on this covering were these two angels that came out and everything. But nevertheless, there was a covering. Why does there have to be a covering? Just leave the tablets open. It says, no, God, the whole business is the world covers over God, but there's a reason for it. It's a good thing. The reason God is covering over so that we can get to the inside reason of this covering, why God covers himself up, namely that we should reveal God in the Kaporet. That's what it means. Therefore, you should do that and not die. Don't just want to go closer to God, but you have to. Where does God appear in the Kaporet, in the covering, in the world? How God controls himself. That's where God is found, and that's what it says. Al tavo el hakodesh. Do not go into the holy place without fixing yourself up. Do not can also mean negative. With negation, if you negate your selfishness, your egotism, your own personal desires, even if they're holy desires, but you have to surrender yourself to what the rabbi said, what Hasidut demands, not what you think is right or what you feel is right, but what you are taught is right. Then you can enter the sacred area. And one of the reasons I became a religious Jew was because I went to a lecture of a big famous professor. This was in the 60s. And he said something against the Jews. He said the Jews are bad or whatever it is. And I was just shaken to my essence because I had like almost zero Jewish identity. I didn't think, being a Jew was less important than the size of your shoes or whatever. And it had no importance whatsoever. But to this person, it did. All of a sudden, he said something about the Jews are bad. I thought, wow, the Jews are so important. All you can pick up is Jews. And finally, I did a little bit of research on it, and I discovered he really was not an anti-Semite. He hated anti-Semite. He hated the idea that the Jews have the Torah, and the Torah controls you. He hated the idea that the Jews are trying to say, you have to live your life according to our book. And it's pretty understandable why nobody would like that idea. But nevertheless, it's true, because the book happens to be that it comes from the same God who's creating us. It's the manufacturer's instructions. So therefore, you should not do what you want or what this professor wanted to do. You have to do what the Creator wants. That's what makes the world a meaningful place. Have a good day with Mashiach. Now, God willing, 8:15 tomorrow morning. See you all. Shalom uvracha. God bless you.